I'm really proud of the fact that the Internet continues to evolve. This is not a design which was fixed in time 40 years ago, but rather it's one which has adapted to new technology. It has swept in new communications capability. It has become an important element of the smartphone. Both of the Internet and the smartphones and the World Wide Web are all mutually reinforcing in many, many ways. So one of the things that Bob and I didn't quite get right was the amount of numerical address space that's needed in the Internet. When we designed it 40 years ago, we did some calculations and estimated that 4.3 billion terminations ought to be enough for an experiment. And so the version of the network that most of you are using is called IP version 4 or TCP IP version 4, which was designed back around that time. Well, we got it wrong. We ran out of the IP version 4 experimental address space around 2011. The second one is even more obscure. The label is buffer bloat. And you might think, okay, so what is this? When you're watching streaming videos, have you ever noticed that sometimes they get real jerky and things slow down and the delays are going up and you sit there waiting for things to reload? Well, it turns out that it is not true that having more buffer memory space is always a good thing. Let me explain. You have a router at home, typically. Maybe it's supplied by a cable or telco company, or maybe you bought one and installed it, or you hired a geek to do that. And so this thing has memory in it. And imagine for a moment that you're running a local network at home and it's running at maybe 100 megabits a second, or maybe 10 megabits, or maybe even a gigabit per second. But the connection that you have out to the rest of the world is not running that fast, unless you happen to be on one of the Google Fiber networks, in which case you're getting a gigabit per second. But most of them don't quite get to that speed. So what happens? The program that you have running inside the house is pushing data like crazy into this buffer, which is filling up and emptying slowly because the data rate on the other end is slower than the rate at which you're pumping it in, which means that there is increasing amounts of delay from the standpoint of this sender over here, waiting to hear acknowledgments coming back from the other end. At some point, the program inside your house is saying, oh my God, they didn't get what I sent. I better send it again. And so you keep retransmitting, pretty soon you create a highly congested condition. So it's counterintuitive, but what you have to do is to design the system so that it doesn't put too much buffer space in the path. It should put only enough to deal with the differential between the high-speed and low-speed side. Of course, this also works in the other direction. So here's the code word for you. The letters that you want to refer to are called Codel-FQ. CODEL-FQ, and that is the kind of thing, that's the technology that you want in your routers. So you could, while you're pounding on the table for IPv6, you could say, and also, by the way, I want Codel-FQ in my router.